The hit Roblox game Make a Cake lied to you. On the surface, it may just look like a straightforward game where you make a cake and feed it to the giant noob, but the so-called cake monsters aren't actually monsters. The cake isn't actually cake at all, and this whole cake factory isn't a factory after all. It's all actually an elaborate experiment created by the government to hide a dark secret. Trust me, this does make sense. In my research, I spoke to all the employees, random talking cakes, I found secret rooms, and I played the older versions. And at first, it might just seem like a collection of one-off random jokes or random bits, but somehow they all seem to connect. And it reveals some pretty dark secrets about Make a Cake. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. But before we do that, please do subscribe. It's free and you can always unsubscribe later. Subscribing is the best way to support my channel. It allows me to make more videos and helps me reach more milestones. I really want to hit 400k soon, and we get closer and closer to that milestone each day. So if you just check to see that you are subscribed, that would be great. Thank you, and back to the video. If you don't know, there are 3 versions of this game. Make a cake and feed it to the giant noob, make a cake back for seconds, and finally, make a cake. I went through each one to see what I could find, and while there wasn't much to find in the first one, it still served well in giving us a timeline to expand upon. And the other 2 games were very helpful in providing evidence of how this factory functions. I then went to talk to all the employees throughout the different versions, and in later versions, all the employees seemed pretty happy with their jobs. We even found an alive cake at one point that sat on top of the giant toilet. It was really peculiar to see, but when we questioned why it could talk or why it was alive, it didn't exactly give us a straightforward answer. But it does let us know that there's some sort of magic going on in this game. Now, because the factory is so big, you can actually teleport to multiple places. Some of them make sense for being in a factory, and others seem wild, even having their own security. However, there is one hidden room that you can't teleport to. If you go to a secret room behind the elevator, you'll find that the company was bringing in a scientist to run experiments on the cake monsters. We even see one of the chairs that they would have tied them down in. We can see the logs from the scientists that had been brought in to figure out why they have been running around, but the more the scientists discovered, the less they wanted to know. Research log entry 1. The manager has asked me to figure out what is causing all the monsters to run amok in the factory. They've been terrorizing the workers and have slowed down production, yet are hard to follow and catch. The giant noob grows restless. Research log entry 2. I have located the cake monster and trapped it in the elevator. Be it the butter or the eggs in the batter, it's too dense to know how to use an elevator. I will plan to examine the monster once it becomes too tired to escape. Research log entry 3. This afternoon, the cake monster started digging a tunnel behind the elevator. Maybe this is how they usually escape us? I will begin the autopsy of the specimen once they tire themselves out. Shouldn't be long now. Research entry number 4. I've done my autopsy. To my surprise, the monster isn't entirely made out of cake. There is something familiar about this, but I can't quite tell what it is. All I know is I feel a sense of dread the further I examine the creature. The research log ends with the scientist realizing the cake monsters are players, and they weren't trying to wreak havoc but merely trying to escape. But then they get abruptly cut off. Initially, I thought the cake monsters would have been the ones that got them, but that really doesn't make much sense considering their whole goal is to escape. What I really think happened was someone higher up didn't want that information getting out. It looks like some people in the company know a lot more than others, because while this researcher didn't know that the cake monsters were people, the lab contains cake monster zombies, which at that point you'd have to know if you were running these experiments what the cake monsters were truly made out of. The question is, why keep it secret? Okay, sure, it doesn't look good if your employees fall into the cake machine once or twice, but considering how often it happens, you would have thought by now they would have made the cake machine smaller so they wouldn't fall in. I mean, at this point, there are so many cake monsters running around the whole factory that it ends up slowing production. Clearly, everyone who's worked here knows about the cake monsters. Surely finding out that the cake monsters were once people isn't that big of an issue given what already goes on in the factory. Well, I think the real reason they don't want us to know is because of the implications. You know, there was one thing bugging me about the cake monsters being people who have fallen into the cake machine. Now, I don't know if any of you have tried to cook a person into a cake before, I really hope you haven't. But hypothetically speaking, I would imagine it wouldn't be as simple as a regular cake mix. But you'll find that all the cakes come out exactly the same regardless of initial ingredients, whether you start off with batter or players' bodies. Unless the machines were specifically designed to turn human remains into cakes. And this is where it all starts to make sense. If you were to travel inside the machine that produces the batter, you'll find a ladder linked to the home of a witch. Seems odd, right? Turns out she's in charge of the batter. You ask what's in it, she says you don't want to know, you insist, and she says she adds a couple of her warts for flavour, which puts you off from asking any more questions. But that's not the whole truth, is it? Remember how I said how the logs ended? Let's look at the exact phrasing. The cakes are a lie. All of them. The cakes are When first reading this, I thought this just meant the cake monsters, but it's not. All the cakes were made out of real people, body parts that have been disguised by the witch to look like batter as we load it up into the machines. That's why there's no change in the recipe, why the cake monsters look no different to regular cakes. The machines were specifically designed to bake human-based cakes. We aren't merely baking cakes, we're disguising corpses beneath heaps of icing and sprinkles. But then, why would the cake factory want to do this? If you've been playing this game for a while, you might be wondering who's actually paying for all this. The company doesn't actually sell any of its cakes, they just feed it to the giant noob. Is the giant paying for it? Well, since they are there 24/7, it doesn't look like they have another job, and apparently the company created them from one of their old employees. I don't think so. We get paid a fair amount for the cakes we make. The machines must be expensive to run, and there are multiple sections for running experiments. What kind of cake company runs these types of experiments? Well, that's just it. I believe that this isn't a cake company after all. It's a secret government-funded project to turn the giant into a weapon. That's why they can afford everything. It's why they never get sued despite multiple health violations. It's why they run experiments alongside the cake making. They need to know what the best food source is to feed the giant. It makes perfect sense that they landed on people because many giants in mythology or typical fiction tend to eat people. It doesn't explain why they make it look like cake, but it could be so that the giant noob doesn't immediately think to eat any of the government's own people if it were to go on a rampage. Or maybe the cake design is just for us, because you can't imagine people would feel particularly comfortable with feeding human remains to this monster. I even think the study of poison cakes could be their way to neutralize the giant if things go wrong. When you interact with any of the employees in this game, they tend to give very simple answers. They don't know what's going on or are happy not knowing. The manager acts like this too, but that can't be right considering we saw in the report logs that the manager knows. The manager is the one who asked the scientists to figure out what's going on with the cake monsters, why they keep wandering around the factory, not wandering, escaping. Surely, when the scientists figured that out, they told the manager, right? Well, wouldn't you know it, but I don't think this is the same manager. We're told that since the last game, someone else took over the manager position. Someone who used to be a regular employee until they got fired. It's likely the manager learned what was going on and tried to take an early retirement. So the company hired someone on the team who wouldn't ask questions and would be thankful for the position. As for the ex-manager, well, I wouldn't be surprised if the company had a different way of firing him. But what do you guys think? Are we on something here? Thank you guys so much for watching. These videos are always fun for me to make, so it's great to know that you guys enjoy them as well. Thank you to my members. Once again, your support for this channel is why I can continue making videos, and I appreciate it so much. But if you can't be a member, that's okay. I'm so thankful to everyone who's subscribed. Thank you, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!